Hello, I'm Jennifer Branch. Do you ever get hopelessly confused about what type of brush to get? I mean, you look at the store and there's all these different brushes, and you know that one of them is a magic wand that will completely transform your paintings. Not really, but that'd be nice. But you don't know which one to get. One artist says flats, one says rounds, one says sable is the only thing to do, and one says all nylon hair. And you have no idea what each type of brush does. So we're starting a new brush series today. First thing I'm going to explore is brush hair. I have 4 different brushes here. I use these 3 brushes. This is my kid's brush, but I'm going to show you why. And we're going to see what an ox hair, a sable, a nylon, and a squirrel hair do. These are all 14 rounds. If you have to buy one brush, I highly recommend that a 14 round is the perfect brush for you. If you paint tiny, maybe down to a 12, maybe go up to a 16, but 14 is about as big as a standard brush size gets, so this is a handy size. And I'm going to show you what each hair does that the other hairs don't do, and why you want each one, and when to use it. Let's paint. Okay, so let's look at a basic Blick Scholastic Art ox hair here. This is a good basic brush. It's not the brush that I would choose for a first brush, but it's all right. It comes to an okay point right here. Not perfect, but not too bad. It has a nice reservoir right here. And it handles all right. It's a little bit weighty. So let's see what happens when we take this basic ox hair and we can't do a great point. Okay. So there's a problem. It picked up paint, but it didn't release it evenly. The reason for that is it just doesn't grab the hair like it should. You know, it's not really meant to be doing that. By the way, whenever you practice with a brush, you need to put it in water, swirl it around, wave it on a piece of paper, put it in water to get rid of the glue that they use to keep it in the nice pretty shape. I used to use primarily the golden nylons. Stopped because I don't like them as well. They don't do what I want them to do. This has a beautiful point. It has a nice big reservoir. Okay, so I start here. Much better release. This one here in a Skoda squirrel hair. It doesn't have as fine hairs here. It has a nice big reservoir. Remember, squirrel hair is not meant to be springy. It's meant to flop. So it's going to behave very differently. We're going to have a okay point. And then it doesn't do too much different on that weight. But if I go over here and I make the mix a little bit soupier, it has a very different effect. See how with the edges? So for a squirrel hair brush, you need to do the mix a little bit differently. This right here is an absolute delight to hold. It's an Isabey squirrel hair. I'm sorry, it's an Isabey sable. It's the one grade down from the Kolinsky, the red sable. And it comes to a beautiful point, and it just feels right in your hand. All right, so I'm going back to about the same consistency as these previous. Okay, so that doesn't do as much. Now you add a bit more water and you have a gorgeous line with just the right amount of hit and miss. It's a big brush, so not a tiny point. Now let's put it to the test. Actually painting. So I'm going to do dinky little trees using the same colors and just see what each brush does. They're all going to have a slightly different kind of stroke. The ox hair, I have to fight it to get it to do what I want it to do. And that really is the big difference between the ox hair and the others. So notice here, I'm fighting with it. I'm really pushing this brush and I'm shoving the hair in the right direction. It kind of lies flat. This is a student grade brush, but it's a student grade brush that's going to make it really hard for anyone but an expert to paint with. That's one of the big difficulties with student grade materials, is because it's what you can afford when you're starting out and you don't want to get too into something. But I mean, look at this. I'm just letting it flop on the paper and go all over the place. You have to blot just right and reshape, and it's not that you can't do a good painting with it. You can do a great painting with an ox hair student really cheap brush, but it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be much harder to do a great painting. So here's more little paintings. I'm doing 4 skies, just like the 4 trees. Nylon. Okay, nylon is very difficult to get the hit and miss effect. It's, no animals were hurt in the making of this brush, which is wonderful, but you can't get the hit and miss strokes. I'm also shoving it. It wants to stay in that shape it's been molded in. So think of it as it's basically lots of little, separate nylon hairs. The hairs don't shape much, but they do hold a little bit more water than they used to. So you can do it. Also a very difficult brush. Squirrel, really easy brush to get the hit and miss effect. Not so great on this particular style of it to get fine detail. I use this brush a lot on location. The wonderful thing about on location is you want just interesting effects and a lot of hit and miss, but you don't want a lot of detail. You can use your camera if you want detail to refer to later. So this is going to be great for your hit and miss effects. This is the all-round easiest brush to use, also the most expensive. So notice, some hit and miss, not quite as much as the squirrel. I'm not having to shove with it like I did with the ox hair and the nylon. I don't have to fight the brush. It does what I want to do. It stays in pretty much the shape I want to put it in. It's easy to use. And that's really the difference between, you can paint with anything. You can paint with a stick. It's the ease of use that you're paying for. So all these were done with ultramarine blue and a little bit of nickel azo yellow. And this is a good, skies and little trees are a perfect way because both of them have edge texture and not too much detail. So what conclusion do we come to here? You can paint with anything. Some of the best paintings that humankind has ever produced have been done with a frayed stick and maybe a bundle of hair tied to it. So does it really matter which of these you do? Not really. You can choose any of them. However, if you want to make it easy for yourself, take this one out. It's not that this can't produce great work, but the ox hair, it's very limp. This is a very cheap student brush, and so it's going to shed a lot. Squirrel hair brushes shed also, so that's not a deal breaker. The fact that it's goes like that and it stays in the same shape, that is a deal breaker. It's not that this can't produce great work, it's that it's going to be harder for you to produce great work. The nylon. Let's say you're a vegetarian and you don't want to use animal products. Great, that makes perfect sense. I painted with this exact brush, and you can buy really huge brushes in nylon for a lot less money than you can in Sable. This is about as big as you can get in Sable. So you're going to use this really nice brush. It comes to a great point. It's springy, right? It comes back to its shape okay. It's all right. What it is the problem with the nylon is it's very stiff. You know, you take this, it goes all over the place. You take this, it springs back almost to the right shape with a tiny touch, just a natural twist of your hand. It'll come right back. This is limp. It doesn't spring back at all. So this, it springs back to that exact shape. Is that what you want? Well, sometimes it is. The nylon is the one I use when I want to pull some paint out, because these brushes aren't going to pull out paint well. They're not stiff, I can't scrub them, and they don't stay in the shape that they're supposed to. They shape more to the shape that I am trying to get. So if I'm wanting to scrub something out, this is the one to use. However, putting paint down, it doesn't let it flow quite as easily. It's a little bit blobby in how it lets go of the pigment. It's not as even. It does return to the nice point. You can get a great point. It's going to let go of the paint unevenly. It's going to spring back perfectly, but you may not want it to spring back perfectly, and it's going to be a very flat wash. So the nylon brush, it's very flat, it's very stiff, it's ideal for scrubbing paint or trying to pull paint out of an area. It is not ideal for laying down a interesting or smooth wash. Actually, it's ideal for laying down a very smooth, very consistent wash. Next, Squirrel. This is actually what I recommend beginners get. This is a 14 Skoda, Aquario, and the Blick Squirrel round is very, very, very similar. And it comes to a reasonably nice point for a squirrel. Remember, squirrel is not primarily for the nice points. So if you want a nice point, this or the Sable are the ones to do. If it's going to hold a lot of water, it's going to do interesting lines. So if you're wanting interesting edges and hit and miss strokes and the rough press surface really picking up some paint and letting some of it go and all of that, Squirrel is your best friend. If you're wanting to do a smooth, perfectly even wash, don't use this brush. Use one of these. If you're wanting to do detail, use one of these. Don't use this. This is good for hit and miss strokes, unevenness, and that is the reason that I really, really recommend this brush for beginners, because it's really easy to be too tight and not loosen up and not do a interesting wash with hit and miss strokes. This makes it easy to do the hit and miss wash with interesting little white sparkles and background color showing through. And so if you're wanting to do that technique, that style, then a Squirrel is the best brush to do. Squirrel's going to loosen you up, and it's precise enough. It's going to loosen you up, and it's also precise enough that you can be fairly accurate. It's not going to go all over the place. It's just going to leave you some interesting gaps. This is the most expensive brush that I own, I think. This is a red Sable. It's not a Kolinsky Sable, so it's one grade down on the Sables. And This is just a gorgeous brush. The Isabees, the balance is nice. If you look at, let's say, this is the worst balance. If you look at them in your hands, it just feels right. It's a nice weight. It's equally weighted. So, and it's meant to hold it about here, which is great because that means that naturally it's comfortable to hold it here. If I hold this here, it kind of flops down, right? If I hold this here, it balances beautifully. It does flop, but it's, the balance point on this is here. The balance point on this is back here. And that makes a difference because that means you're going to do looser, more natural strokes. Because if you're way up here, you end up painting tiny bits. And if you're back a little bit where this is naturally weighted for you to be, it's here. Okay, but that isn't the point, right? It's the hair. Okay, so Sable is the most used brush hair that all artists want. Most sought after brush hair, perhaps I should say. That all artists want because it picks up paint beautifully and lets go of it beautifully. How many interesting blanks you have in it is determined completely by how you load the brush. So, you know, this is the brush for control freaks. This is it. And it comes to a beautiful point, control, and it's very springy, so it easily returns to that point. But if you want to shape it into doing dry brush, you can do that, and immediately it goes back to the shape that you want it to be in. So this is the most all-purpose brush. This is going to give you very tight paintings, very loose paintings. You can do anything with this. And it's also the most expensive for a reason, which is why I recommend this. And most people find it much easier to do tight paintings than loose paintings. So this kind of helps you on that. The size will help considerably too, but a number 14 Sable is going to be very expensive compared to this. I think it's about 3 or 4 times as much money. So that's a difference. This is the only brush I would not recommend getting. These 3 hairs all have their places. This, it's a house painter brush, or in my case, kindergartner brush. So buy whatever brush appeals to you. You can paint with any of them. Any of these brushes can do great paintings for you. I recommend this if you're a beginner and you're trying to get looser. This, if you're a little bit more into it and you're willing to spend the money for what is really the most usable, easiest to use brush. That's easiest to use. This, if you're just wanting to blob some paint on the paper and have some fun with it, I still probably would go with, you know, the scroll, because this is going to be hard. It's not going to do what you want it to do. This, if you're vegetarian and you don't use animal products, perfect. If you're wanting to do a whole lot of dark washes and pull out interesting spots, perfect. So each brush has its own use. I hope this helped you decide what kind of brush hair that you want to buy and helped you make some of those decisions. For more information, please visit my website, paintingwatercolor.com. I'll have the whole lesson out, and happy painting. Thanks for watching.